At 37 years old, a man named Daniel had just finalized his divorce from his wife, Maya. They had been together for 7 years and married for 3. Looking back, Daniel thinks he should have seen the train crash coming. The warning signs were there from the beginning, but he ignored them because he loved her, or so he thought. Rochelle, Maya's best friend, was the label given to every flaw in their relationship. Have you ever met someone and immediately realized they were bad news? That was Rochelle. She was loud, self-centered, and constantly needed to be the center of attention. From the moment Daniel met her, he felt like she was sizing him up, looking for something to use against him, but Maya couldn't see it. She saw Rochelle as her college ride or die, someone who had been there through it all. Daniel told himself he'd tolerate her because she was important to Maya, but Rochelle knew exactly how to push his buttons. During wedding planning, things began to go wrong quickly. It started small. Rochelle disliked their color palette, describing it as incredibly boring. She complained about the food, and then she insisted on walking down the aisle first, ahead of all the bridesmaids. Yeah, you read that correctly. Rochelle wanted her own solo walk down the aisle. Her argument was this: I've been there through every one of Maya's heartbreaks, every hard moment in her life. This day is about celebrating the people who stood by her, not just the marriage. Daniel assumed it was a joke at first. Who actually asks for that? But Maya just nodded along, and he could watch her cave in real time. He tried to step in. He told Maya, look, this is our wedding, not a stage for Rochelle to perform on. Maya became defensive, claiming he was making a huge deal out of nothing. Meanwhile, Rochelle acted as if he had insulted her entire existence. Wow, she said, I didn't realize your fiancé was so controlling. That hurt. But instead of standing up for Daniel, Maya folded. It's just one small thing, she explained afterward. If it makes her happy, what's the harm? So Rochelle had her grand entrance. She walked down the aisle as if it were her own wedding. Daniel gritted his teeth and smiled for the photos, telling himself that once they were married, this kind of nonsense would stop. A big mistake. Huge. Rochelle did not fade into the background after the wedding. If anything, she grew more invested in their lives. Daniel and Maya would be talking about their weekend plans, and Rochelle's name would come up like clockwork. Oh, I already told Rochelle she could join us, Maya would say. Or, Rochelle thinks we should try that new place instead. Daniel tried to bring it up gently. I like that you have a close friend, he said, but I feel like Rochelle's a little too involved in our lives. Can we set some boundaries? Maya became defensive again. She's my best friend. I can't just shut her out. Daniel hadn't been around during the college years or the breakups, but he could see clearly that Rochelle didn't respect him or their marriage, and Maya was too wrapped up in their friendship to notice. By staying silent, he had let Rochelle believe she had the right to interfere. When he finally realized how deep it had gone, it was already too late. After about a year of marriage, things weren't perfect, but they were peaceful. That was until Rochelle showed up at their door one Friday evening, sobbing as if her entire world had fallen apart. Daniel and Maya had been planning a quiet night in, homemade pizza, a movie, when Nuri Cindy and Tarsangi the doorbell rang. Within seconds, he could hear Rochelle crying. There she was, clinging onto Maya like a shipwreck survivor, mascara streaming down her face and a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. He ended it, Rochelle sobbed. I can't do this alone. Maya brought her inside, shooting Daniel a look that said, we'll talk later. He stayed in the kitchen, trying to focus on the pizza, while Rochelle rambled about how her boyfriend Derek had completely blindsided her, ending things over a phone call. Rochelle, of course, insisted she had been the perfect girlfriend and that Derek was simply emotionally unavailable. Do you have anywhere to stay tonight? Maya asked gently. Rochelle glanced toward Daniel in the kitchen before saying she had nowhere else to turn. Sure enough, Maya turned to him. Would it be okay if Rochelle stayed here for a few days, just until she gets back on her feet? What was he supposed to say? He nodded and forced a smile. Yeah, of course. At first, Daniel tried to stay patient. Breakups are rough, but by the end of the week, it was clear that a few days was going to stretch into something far longer. Rochelle wasn't simply staying with them, she was taking over. The guest room became a disaster zone. Clothes everywhere, empty mugs, and Takeout containers piled on the nightstand. She essentially lived in the living room, binge watching reality shows at full volume and monopolizing the couch. The kitchen wasn't safe either. She'd cook without cleaning up, and Daniel would come downstairs in the morning to find the sink full of dirty dishes and half-eaten meals left out on the counter. I know Rochelle's going through a lot, he told Maya, but she's treating this place like a hotel. It's not fair to us. Maya looked torn. I know it's frustrating, but she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She just needs a little more time. It's been 2 weeks, Daniel said. How much longer? Maya said she talked to her. But Rochelle flipped the script, portraying herself as the victim. I'm sorry if my presence is such a burden, she said dramatically. I'll just leave if that's what you want. Maya rushed to comfort her. Oh, no, it's not like that. Rochelle knew exactly how to manipulate Maya, and Maya fell for it every single time. The final straw came roughly a month in. One Saturday morning, Daniel walked out to the garage and found his power drill, circular saw, and other tools scattered across the driveway. Rochelle was sitting on the concrete, painting random wooden scraps in bright neon colors. What's going on here? He asked. She looked up, completely unbothered. Oh, it's for my healing process. My therapist suggested doing something creative. He stared at her. You went through my tools without asking. She shrugged. I didn't think you'd care. He was done. He went back inside and told Maya firmly she has to go. He wasn't asking anymore. This time, Daniel didn't leave it up to Maya. He sat down with both of them and laid everything out plainly. Rochelle, we've done our best to support you through this, but it's been over a month. You need to start making other arrangements. Rochelle accused him of being cruel. You're kicking me out when I'm at my absolute lowest. Wow, some supportive person you are. I'm not kicking you out today, he said, but you need to find somewhere else soon. Maya looked torn, but for once she didn't side with Rochelle. Rochelle left within a week, storming off in a fury, muttering something about how Daniel had always been controlling and Maya deserved better. As she drove away, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, their home felt like theirs again. Even so, he knew this wouldn't be the last they heard from Rochelle. The real Rochelle damage happened on a random Saturday afternoon. Maya had gone out for her usual brunch with Rochelle. Daniel stayed home, running errands, grocery shopping, laundry, some yard work. By the time Maya got back, something seemed off. She barely said anything, mumbling a hey and heading straight to the bedroom. She stayed distant for the rest of the day, avoided eye contact, answered his questions with one-word replies, spent most of the evening glued to her phone. Daniel figured Rochelle had unloaded some of her usual drama and Maya just needed time to decompress. But that night she barely touched her dinner before going to bed early, curled up on the far edge of the mattress. The next morning, Daniel addressed it directly. Maya, seriously, what's going on? You've been acting differently since brunch. She paused before saying, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest. The knot in his stomach tightened. What is it? She finally turned to face him, her expression a mix of anger and hurt. Were you with someone else yesterday? He blinked, completely thrown off. What? What are you talking about? Her voice sharpened. Rochelle said she saw you in a parking lot. She said you were in your car, kissing some woman. For a split second, he almost laughed. It was so absurd, but when he saw Maya's serious expression, his confusion turned to frustration. Maya, that's ridiculous. I was running errands. She described your car, Maya said sharply. She said you were wearing your gray jacket. She even knew the parking lot near that shopping center off Riverside Drive. Yeah, because I was at that shopping center. That's where our grocery store is. I wasn't kissing anyone. I was buying vegetables and dish soap. Maya crossed her arms. Then why would Rochelle say she saw you? I don't know, Maya. Why don't you ask her? Because I didn't do anything wrong. But she wasn't listening. I don't know what to believe, she said quietly. Rochelle wouldn't lie about something like this. That hit Daniel like a punch in the gut. After everything they had built together, she couldn't trust him over Rochelle. You've known me for 7 years, he said, his voice rising. Do you really think I'd cheat on you in a parking lot in broad daylight? Does that even remotely sound like me? Maya didn't answer. She just sat there staring at her hands. I need some time to think, she finally said. The days that followed were awful. Maya moved into the guest room saying she needed space. Every time Daniel tried to bring up the subject, she shut him down. I'm not ready to talk. He couldn't stop thinking about Rochelle. This was exactly the kind of chaos she thrived on. But more than that, he couldn't ignore the bigger issue. Maya's reaction, the fact that she didn't give him even a moment's benefit of the doubt, revealed more about their marriage than Rochelle's lies ever could. Maya left a week later, having packed her things without telling him where she was going. The following morning, he got a text from her. I think it's best if we separate for now. I'll have my attorney reach out. That was it. No conversation, no attempt to work through anything. Just a text and a lawyer. It felt like their entire marriage had been discarded over one absurd fabrication. Part of Daniel wanted to fight, to prove his innocence and make Maya understand. But another part of him was finished. If she was willing to throw everything away that quickly, maybe he didn't want to save their marriage anyway. Over the next few weeks, their split became public, and Rochelle made sure everyone heard her version of events. Mutual friends started acting strangely around Daniel, dropping vague hints about how he needed to reflect on his behavior. Even his own family started asking uncomfortable questions. It felt like he was living inside a nightmare. Maya stayed silent through all of it. No calls, no texts, no attempts to reach out. At first, Daniel was furious, angrier than he had ever been in his life. But as the days turned into weeks, the anger faded into something colder and harder. If Maya didn't trust him enough to even have a conversation, maybe he didn't need her in his life. He wasn't about to beg someone who didn't believe in him. Update. About 2 months after Maya left, on a Wednesday evening, Daniel was minding his own business, scrolling through his phone while eating dinner alone, when he got a text from an unfamiliar number. Hi, this is Paige. I know Rochelle lied about you. Can we talk? He stared at the screen for a long moment. The name rang a faint bell. Something about a birthday party Rochelle and Maya had dragged him to a couple of years back. His first instinct was to ignore it, but something about the way she phrased it hooked his attention. What do you mean? He replied. What lie? Her response came almost immediately. About the cheating. Rochelle admitted she made the whole thing up. I think you should see the proof. The next day, Daniel and Paige met at a quiet cafe near downtown. When he arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, fidgeting with her phone. Thanks for coming, she said. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to hear from me. What's this about Rochelle lying? He asked. She pulled out her phone and opened a text conversation. I've been friends with Rochelle for a long time, but after this, I can't keep quiet. You deserve to know what really happened. She handed him the phone, and he started reading. The messages between Paige and Rochelle were shocking. Rochelle, OMG, Maya finally left him. She actually fell for it. Lowell, I almost feel bad. Almost. Paige, what are you even talking about, Rochelle? I told her I spotted him in a parking lot kissing some random woman. You should have seen how quickly she believed me. Paige, wait, are you serious? Why would you do that? Rochelle, because he's a controlling bore, and she's too blind to see it. I had to do something to help her. Daniel kept scrolling, his hands trembling with rage. Rochelle, it's not like their marriage was going anywhere anyway. Maya is so trusting she'll believe whatever I tell her. Paige, please, this is seriously messed up. Rochelle, whatever. She's better off without him. And honestly, I was sick of hearing about her perfect little life. Gag. He couldn't read any further. He handed the phone back to Paige, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. She actually said all that? Paige nodded, visibly distressed. Yeah, she bragged about it like it was some kind of victory. When she started mocking Maya for being so gullible, I realized just how twisted the whole thing was. Daniel sat there trying to absorb what he had just read. Rochelle hadn't just lied. She had deliberately dismantled his marriage and then mocked her own best friend in the process. Why are you telling me this now? He finally asked. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Paige stared down at her coffee. Honestly, I was scared. Rochelle has a long memory and a sharp tongue, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to Maya either. Daniel took screenshots of the messages and thanked Paige for having the courage to come forward. On the drive home, he couldn't stop replaying the conversation. He wasn't just angry, he was absolutely furious. Furious at Rochelle for being so calculating and manipulative, furious at Maya for accepting it so readily, and furious at himself for letting Rochelle operate unchecked for so long. But underneath all of that, he felt vindicated. For months, he had been carrying around a cloud of shame, picking apart every choice he'd made. Now he had proof that none of it had been his fault. By the time he pulled into his driveway, his rage had cooled into something more deliberate. He forwarded the screenshots to his attorney with a brief note. This is what actually happened. Let me know how we can use this. Then he stared at his phone, debating whether to contact Maya. Part of him didn't want to. What was the point at this stage? She had already shown where her loyalty lay. But another part of him felt she deserved to know the truth, even if it changed nothing between them. He typed out a message. "We need to talk. It's important." Her reply came faster than he expected. "What do you want?" He kept it brief. "I have proof that Rochelle lied. Can we meet? You should see this for yourself." There was a long pause before she responded. "Fine, tomorrow afternoon." They met at a park not far from her parents' neighborhood. Daniel wasn't trying to win her back. He had no interest in that anymore, but he needed her to know the truth, if only to clear his name. When Maya arrived, she looked uncertain and guarded. The quiet confidence she once carried completely gone. She spotted him and gave a small, hesitant wave before walking over. "What's this about?" she asked, arms folded across her chest. He didn't waste any time. He pulled out his phone, opened the screenshots, and held it out to her. "Read this," he said evenly. Maya took the phone and began scrolling. At first, her expression stayed neutral, but as she read further, it shifted entirely. Her eyes went wide, her mouth fell open slightly, and the color drained from her face. By the time she reached the final message, she handed the phone back with shaking hands. "She lied," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Yeah," Daniel said, keeping his voice steady. "She lied about all of it. She invented the entire story to break us up, and then she laughed about it with her friend." Maya sat down on the bench beside him and stared at the ground. "I didn't know," she said softly. "I never thought she would ever—" "You never thought she'd lie to you?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. "That's the problem, Maya. You didn't stop to think. You didn't question it for even a second. You just took her word and left me to deal with the fallout." She flinched but didn't respond. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this has been? My friends, my family, even people at work started looking at me like I was some kind of villain. All because you couldn't take 2 minutes to actually talk to me before making up your mind." Tears filled her eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said. "Rochelle has been my best friend since college. I trusted her completely." "Yeah, well, that trust just cost you your marriage," he said. Maya looked up at him, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I truly didn't know. I swear." "That's the thing, Maya," Daniel said, his tone softening but remaining firm. "You didn't know because you never gave me a chance to explain. You trusted her more than you trusted me, and that speaks volumes about where I stood in this marriage." They sat quietly for a few minutes. Finally, Maya spoke again. "I'll cut her off completely," she said. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. I'll do absolutely whatever it takes." Daniel let out a long breath. Part of him wanted to believe her, but the damage had already been done. She had chosen Rochelle over him without a moment's hesitation. "I don't think we can come back from this," he admitted. "It's not only about what Rochelle did, it's about how quickly and easily you believed her, how little faith you had in me. That's not something counseling can simply undo." Maya began to cry harder. "I was foolish," she said between sobs. "I should have come to you first. I should have trusted you. Please just give me one more chance." He shook his head. "I'm sorry, Maya. I can't do that. This isn't purely about forgiveness. It's about trust. And once trust is gone, it's almost impossible to get back." He thought about all those nights he'd spent alone, replaying every conversation, wondering what he could have changed. All the friends who had distanced themselves because they believed Rochelle's story. All the moments he had doubted his own worth because Maya had discarded him so effortlessly. His sympathy evaporated. "I think it's best if we both move forward separately," he said, standing up. "I wish things had gone differently, but this is where we are." Maya didn't try to stop him. She just sat there, crying quietly into her hands as he turned and walked away. He didn't look back. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again. That night, Maya sent him a long message apologizing and begging him to reconsider. He didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Rochelle's lie may have been the spark, but Maya's lack of trust was the real reason their marriage had collapsed, and Daniel had no interest in trying to resurrect something broken beyond repair. Instead, he forwarded the screenshots to a handful of mutual friends who had quietly distanced themselves from him. He didn't add any commentary. He just let the messages speak for themselves. Within hours, his phone was buzzing with apologies and messages of support. One friend wrote, "I genuinely can't believe Rochelle would do something like that. I'm so sorry for not reaching out sooner. You didn't deserve any of this. It felt good to be vindicated, but honestly, Daniel wasn't interested in rebuilding those connections. If they had been so quick to assume the worst about him, they weren't the kind of people he wanted in his corner anyway. He didn't bother confronting Rochelle. She had already revealed exactly who she was, and he wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much destruction she had caused. But word still found its way to him. Apparently, once the screenshots started making the rounds, people began cutting ties with her one by one. Rochelle tried to defend herself, insisting she had only been looking out for Maya and that Daniel was controlling and toxic. But nobody was buying it. Sure enough, when Daniel checked Rochelle's social media through a private browsing window, there were a string of posts about how her so-called friends had abandoned her after she had only been trying to help. One post read, "Apparently, people can't handle honesty. I stood up for Maya when nobody else would, and now I'm the villain." Unbelievable. The comments weren't exactly sympathetic. Most people pushed back, saying things like, "You didn't help anyone. You destroyed a marriage," and laughed about it. Maybe look in the mirror before pointing fingers at everyone else. It was genuinely satisfying to watch her finally face some accountability. A few weeks later, Rochelle lost her job. Once word of what she had done spread through her professional circle, her coworkers started keeping their distance. She had always been the type to stir up conflict at the office, but after this, nobody wanted anything to do with her. Eventually, her manager intervened, citing ongoing interpersonal issues as the reason for her dismissal. Daniel would like to say he felt some sympathy for her, but he didn't. She had spent years manipulating people and leaving wreckage behind her. And now she was finally experiencing the consequences of that. Meanwhile, Maya's situation wasn't exactly flourishing either. She had moved back in with her parents, and from what Daniel heard, things were financially tight. Her mother, who had always been quietly skeptical of Rochelle, was livid when she learned the full truth. Apparently, she had told Maya directly, "You threw away a genuinely good man because of a liar. How could you let that happen?" Harsh, perhaps, but not entirely wrong. And in a final twist of irony, Maya actually reached out to Rochelle at some point, apparently trying to apologize and see if there was anything left to salvage. Rochelle just laughed at her, told her she was pathetic for even trying and that she was better off without her in her life. They both got exactly what they earned. Looking back, Daniel can't say he's happy about the way things unfolded, but he's genuinely grateful for where he ended up. Rochelle and Maya's toxic friendship was a slow-burning fuse, and he just happened to be standing nearby when it finally went off. But in the end, they brought each other down, and he got to walk away and start fresh. Karma doesn't always show up on schedule, but when it does, where it does. So it makes a impression. Maya and Rochelle both made their choices, and now they're living inside those choices every single day. Daniel isn't. He's built something that actually makes him happy, surrounded by people who genuinely have his back. And honestly, that turned out to be the best possible outcome he could have hoped for. Do you think Maya deserves a second chance after everything that happened, or did she lose that the moment she chose Rochelle's word over his? Let us know what you think in the comments.